Welcome to the LandLife podcast with your host, PJ Riley.
Hey guys, welcome to the LandLife podcast. My name is PJ Riley. Guys, before we get started, like I always say, like, subscribe, leave 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. We're all over the place. Guys, the point of that is to get guys like Mike's name out there so that people can see what he does and they can follow him as well. So my guest today, guys, from Arte, Mike Machin, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mike Machin. You want to call him Machine, and when you see that beard, you absolutely want to call him a business machine. Mike, go ahead and let everybody know who you are, what you do, where you're from, and we'll go from there.
Cool. Yeah, appreciate it. My name's Mike. I grew up in Southern California. I started my first business there. I was doing motion graphics for TV shows and directing music videos and things like that. Excuse me. I started that company in 2002, and up until about 2015, I was doing that full time. That was my main business. And I grew up as a graffiti writer in LA. So I was really attracted to that kind of art form, and that never really left me. I was always kind of involved in that. And as things kind of started getting weird with the motion graphics industry, there was kind of like some weird things happening, after the recession of 2008. That ended up hitting all industries. And then we had this other kind of weird recession that was like a industry specific. I don't know if it's called a recession. I don't know what the name for that is, but it was when like Hulu and all the streaming platforms started coming, all the networks started suffering a lot. At least that's my understanding. A lot of the TV producers were telling me that. So our work started getting really weird because everybody was going over there, and I don't know, I just started hearing all these stories and everything started slowing down. But I was also getting really burned out on that whole industry in general. So I started wanting to do more stuff in the graffiti art space, but more on the community side. And I was volunteering at a place called the Venice Art Walls on Venice Beach. It's like these graffiti walls that are legal. And so as a volunteer, you just basically assign people a spot to paint when they come to paint, and sort of answer any questions and stuff, and just sort of be like a quote real graffiti writer on the premises, so that you can kind of talk to them about these kind of things. And so when I was doing that, that's when it kind of like spawned my interest in giving back to the community in that way, because I was having these conversations with these kids that, I'm sitting there as I don't remember how old I was. It was a 40 something. And, you're talking to a teenager. And I was remembering when I was a teenager, if I was talking to a 40 something year old person, I'd be like, whatever. Do you not swear on this? Cause I swear a lot.
Swear all you want.
Okay, cool. So, you can remember being a teenager. You're like, fuck this old guy, he's not going to tell me anything. But as we're both graffiti writers, even though I'm older, there was a mutual respect between each other. And I kind of saw an opportunity to be able to sort of be a positive influence on some of these younger people. And in the graffiti culture, there's sort of a lack of positive role models, and not a lot of people that are sort of doing these kind of things. And, I was a business owner and I had all these kind of different things going. So I was like, why can't I be a positive influence for some of these younger graffiti writers coming up in the culture? And so that spawned me wanting to open up a community art space in LA. So I opened up a studio in San Pedro, California. And it was basically just an open space where we had these tables with markers and books, and the kids, anybody, it was open to anybody, but typically it was like kids coming in after school, kind of gathering there and drawing and just talking about things, and just sort of like a nice little community space. And then we were also hosting art shows every month. There was like a first Thursday. They call it an art walk, but it was more like of a food truck walk because they ended up bringing in all these food trucks. So, but what was cool is it brought in a huge crowd of people, and so we were able to showcase these artists, and that just started building, and it was a kind of an interesting thing because as sort of an older graffiti writer, I've been in the Los Angeles graffiti scene since 1991. So, I'm not going to say that I'm like one of the most known people, but I'm at least notable, so people can, look back through the history books or whatever of Los Angeles graffiti, and they can find me. So I've gained a lot of relationships. So what was kind of cool is to be able to we had these art shows where, you'd have this old school, like legendary graffiti writer on the wall, and then next to it is this like 16-year-old kid's artwork, so it's like, it was creating these cool opportunities to let these kids or just not even kids. I mean, some were kids, but just people, giving them the opportunity to showcase work with people that they just normally wouldn't be able to do that. So it's kind of a lot of different things, and that was mainly the community, the start of the community thing. And I know this is getting a little long, and this is just so many different things, but and we ended up starting some other programs like within the graffiti culture, there's things called crews, and they're just basically like groups of people that, you have to get initiated. It kind of sounds like a gang, but it's not. It's not a gang. It's you're more grouping together under this one acronym, and doing graffiti art together. And so we created a new model for a graffiti crew, which was more like we did graffiti art type of stuff, but we did community service work instead of like destructive things. So we would go and say, find an alley that, those alleys in sort of underserved communities that people just dump all kinds of shit. There's like a dresser and a mattress and just all this trash, and like shit catches on fire, like those kind of alleys. So we would clean all that stuff out and then paint a nice mural on the wall. And we were doing different things like that. And so, sorry, my thing is, can you still hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good to go.
I was getting this warning that my speaker or something changed on my settings, my audio settings. But anyway,
so far you're good to go right now.
Yeah, so we were doing that, and so that crew still exists. We still do that kind of work. I have somebody else running that right now. And then we had another program that's called the Mobile Graffiti Yard, and it's like a modular wall system that all fits in a cargo van. It ends up being a 80-foot wide by 8 feet tall. So we would do community events around that. So we would do live painting exhibitions and things like that. So kind of a lot of different community type of stuff.
So real quick then, you're doing a ton of stuff for other people, right? You're doing like all these kids probably would have nowhere to do graffiti if it weren't for all the stuff you guys are doing. Let's say you're the guy watching this video. You're like, hey, I got a community. I live in Phoenix. I want to do this in my community. How do they afford that? Like, how do you get the building? How do you pay for all the supplies? Like, where does that? I mean, financially, how is that? How were you able to do that?
Yeah, that was a struggle actually, and it was just kind of all in mentality. Like I didn't have any real plan as far as finances. The motion graphics business, the way that I was running that was pretty lucrative, and the margins are pretty huge for most of the projects, because a lot of motion graphics companies, they'll have like a creative director, and then they'll hire a bunch of animators, and so the creative director and the designers do the design, and it's just like a team kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point in my career, I was like, I'm just going to learn how to do all of this shit. and so I was able to, yeah, I mean, it's not the best, they say you can't scale a business like that, and it's true. You reach your capacity because you only have so much time. But we're talking about budgets that are, a small budget was like $5,000 and upwards of like 50 grand or even more,
Sure.
with no products to purchase. Like all I had to buy was a $10,000 computer every 3-4 years. And that was mainly it. I mean, I did have to buy like a lot more stuff. And I don't want to get too far into motion graphics, but the point is, like, I was making pretty good money.
Okay.
And so I was like, how can I do this thing without bringing on a ton more expenses on me? So I was like, I owned a house at the time in Atwater Village, is a little area of LA. So I asked a buddy of mine, I said, hey, if I wanted to move out to San Pedro, would you want to rent my house? So I ended up renting the house to him. And then I just slept in the back of this like shitty, I mean, it was cool. It was like 2,400 square feet, but I basically sectioned it off halfway. So the front 1,200 feet was the studio and gallery and all that. Okay. And then I just lived in the back, and it was a pretty shitty existence. I mean, there was no heat, no air, no shower, no kitchen, no hot water, no nothing really. It was just, and I slept on a recliner because I was like super paranoid because it's illegal to do that. So I was like, if anybody comes in and they see a bed, they're going to know I live here, and then I'll get kicked out. So I just like had a recliner back there. So I was like, I did that for years. And so it didn't really change. Yeah, it was ridiculous. But it was also the idea, it was like I can run my motion graphics business from there.
Yeah.
And so the expenses didn't really change that much. I mean, they did change, to some, but I was trying to offset it in that kind of way. So
yeah,
I don't know how I wouldn't suggest doing it that way if somebody else wanted to do it. But to your question, that's how I got started, because I didn't really have a plan for the finances. It was just like, I just want to do this and I'm going to figure it out. Then we ended up starting a business out of that. So we started selling specialty spray paint and markers and things like that. And then graffiti writers, they tend to carry stickers with their name on it, and they'll put those up around. So I had some screen printing skills. So I was like, I'll just start screen printing in this place too. Started doing stickers and ended up scaling the business side quite a bit. And so now that sort of helps, fund all of these kind of things. Plus you can get grants because we have a nonprofit, so we can get grants for specific projects, which I get help with. But as far as like the day-to-day, the business that we're scaling is helping pay for all that kind of stuff.
So you basically funded this all yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to say 100%. We teamed up with for that mobile graffiti yard thing. We teamed up with this group called the Palos Verdes Art Center. And so I designed the project, and they actually paid to get it fabricated. Mm-hmm. And when I was doing all of this stuff, I was driving a Cadillac, and like, it was just like a normal sort of nice car, and eventually I was like, I don't even know why I want this anymore. And I traded it in and I got a cargo van. And so I can haul shit around. So so I just started changing my whole lifestyle to kind of make this whole thing work, So that's
absolutely.
Basically
so
how.
Man, that's you sacrifice a ton for, basically to help out a large group of, I'd say, kids, right?
Yeah, I mean, the focus was the youngsters, because they're the ones that I felt like needed the positive influence the most. But at the same time, I also started a podcast that was and I still do that. It's delivering personal development information to that culture specifically. Like anybody can listen to it, but people like you and me that are in Arte Syndicate, you probably read all the same shit that I do. And, we listen to the same people, for the most part. So delivering that kind of information to like maybe people like you maybe doesn't make a whole lot of sense because there's a lot of that already out there. But framing it to where it's like, hey, this is for you guys. This is what I'm learning from all this reading and all this shit that I'm doing, and this is how it can help you specifically as the graffiti culture. So doing things like that and all of the programs, I'm finding that it's helping anybody across the board. I mean, so it's, you know, there's adults that are sort of stuck in their ways for a long time that are listening to the podcast or participating in the art shows at our place and stuff like that, that are, you know, finding different ways to do things. But, you know, so it really is for everybody, but our focus was at first on the youngsters.
Yeah. So that's kind of one thing I wanted to talk about, because communication with so you and I are in Arte, right? We talk to a lot of people that are business owners, you know, they're incredibly successful. Going into a community where you're helping people, you're helping kids have a safe place to you know, do their art without getting in trouble. The communication, the language you're using for these kids is not the same as you'd be using for, let's say you talk to, you know, Arte Ed Milet, right?
Yeah.
You'd be able to, you need to be able to talk to these kids in a specific way that the vast majority of people can't do. You know, the vast majority of people will go up to, you know, a kid in the inner city and they won't understand how to talk to them. And I don't mean language. I mean the way you talk to a kid in the inner city. So if you're talking with a guy, let's say our guy in Phoenix that wants to do this as well, you know, how would you coach them in order to be able to talk to these guys? Because you can have the building, you can have all the supplies you want. If you can't communicate, it's not going to work. You know, if you communicate with these kids like you would the pastor at your church, it ain't going to work, right? So how would you recommend people talk, I don't know, maybe develop skills or communicate?
You know, that's a really good and interesting question that I hadn't really thought about, because I'm assuming you're asking how would I coach somebody that didn't come up in the graffiti culture or
yes.
didn't come up in, like,
because I know you're going to have a lot of people that have the desire, they're going to want to be able to do this.
Yeah.
But that day-to-day communication is foreign to them.
Yeah. So what I would think, what I would do if I wasn't part of the culture and I knew everything that I know now, and I wanted to do something specifically for these kind of kids that are out tagging on your building and shit, and you want to give them a, you know, hey, I'll give you this wall, just do it here instead. Don't fucking etch my windows and do all this kind of other stuff, you know. If you wanted to do something like that, what I would say would the best thing to do would be to find somebody that is in the culture to sort of be a hub between you and the kids. Because one thing that you're never ever going to be able to do, and you can become this kind of cool guy that, like, hey, you know, Jimmy that owns the tire shop, you know, he's cool as shit, he lets us do this type of stuff. Jimmy's never going to be as respected as somebody that did come up in the culture. So what I would say for that guy or girl or woman or whoever that wanted to do something like this, I would say, you know, find somebody that looks responsible in terms of, you know, they're doing cool stuff within the culture, or their work is really good, or whatever that is. You can find those people on Instagram and things like that. And I would start there, because at least you have somebody that already knows the language and already has a reputation among those kids. So, like, you know, for me, what was kind of interesting is I had to kind of rebuild my reputation, because I was active from, say, 91 to like 99. So most of these kids that I was meeting had never heard of me. Like, they had heard of my crew because I'm from one of the most famous crews in LA. So when I would say my name, my graffiti name, nothing would change on their face. They would just be like, okay.
Come on, you don't know me?
Yeah. When I would say what crew I was from, then it'd be like, oh shit, you're from there. And then the conversation would be able to start going. So I think it's really helpful to have somebody that really actually can talk to these people from an experience standpoint. But you can always be one of those cool people that lets people do stuff. And for the most part, you will get respected. like there's an example in San Pedro. There's an electronics shop that lets people paint on the back of the building. And so they're just, they're probably older than me, just people that are like, hey, go. I don't even know how it started. When I moved to San Pedro, I learned about this place. And most of the older graffiti writers there, they really respect that place. And so whenever they're talking about it to any young people, they'll say, if you go paint there, just keep the paint on the back wall where they said you can paint. Don't paint on the front of his building. Don't write on his dumpster. And so you can establish respect by providing an outlet like that, because as far as like, we had that community art space where kids can come and draw, but we didn't really have a full-time place where anybody could just walk up and do some spray paint type of artwork. So those places they're very rare, and the turnover is pretty high. So like, a lot of times they'll pop up and then people will get sick of it because, no matter what you do, there's going to be some element of the other stuff that's the less desirable for the culture, not the culture, but the community, So if you say you can paint this wall, there's 100% chance that somebody's going to tag on
over it,
the light pole that's, near that spot, So it's not the easiest culture to manage, but, sure. I don't know. I still feel pretty strongly about just, if you look back in history, people have been writing on walls for tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years, So, I mean, this is just, they're doing it with spray paint now. I mean, they've been doing it since the Roman Empire, since fucking cavemen,
Yes.
So I don't know. I that's kind of the way I look at it. It's like, I'd rather say, hey, here's a place where you can do it, rather than try to be the guy that says, hey, you shouldn't do that. It's like, they're going to do it anyway. So,
I mean, just like you said earlier too, when the old guy says, hey, don't spray paint on my building, he's going to come back tomorrow and there's going to be a lot more spray paint on his building.
Yeah, exactly. Right? As soon as it gets dark.
if that same old guy, I don't know why I keep using old guy, but if that same guy says, yeah, here you use this wall, use this space right here, you're allowed to use my back wall here, just stay there. Those kids may respect that guy, and you have a much better chance of having them, do actually better work too, and it's not going to cause any sort of conflict between you and them.
Yeah, I mean, those places are needed. I mean, it's like, it's the same thing with like skateboarding and stuff like that. Like, if you go and you grind the curb in front of the bank, it's going to turn all black and look all shitty. And but if you provide them with a real spot for them to do it, they're going to do it anyway. They're going to do it somewhere. So, I mean, like, we should be at least trying to provide some kind of outlets for it. It's not going anywhere, like any of those things.
Well, in today's day and age too, there's so much. If you got a kid going out and doing something either creative or I guess athletic in skateboarding, health related, it's better than sitting inside all day and playing on their phones, right?
Yeah.
So like, if you have kids or you're around kids all the time, that's what they're going to default to, is sitting at home playing on their phone. If they're going out and skateboarding, or they're going out and working on their art somewhere, and you can help provide that, and it doesn't really negatively impact your life at all, hey, that's a win-win, right?
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So how many locations do you guys have right now?
So right now we have 2 locations. We still have the San Pedro location, and now we have one in Las Vegas. So those 2 locations are like, once COVID hit, it was kind of hard to do all of the community stuff. Nobody was really gathering. So we're kind of working our way back to that. And a lot of the community stuff ended up going digital. So I was putting out a lot of content, like showing people how to do things and putting out some sort of sneaking in some kind of mindset type of stuff here and there. And then focusing on the podcast. So I was trying to find other ways to continue giving back to the community while this whole gathering thing was kind of weird. So the 2 locations, they're not specifically, community type of things. We do have that aspect there, but we do e-commerce, fulfillment, sticker printing, and we create some of our own original products. So a lot of that is building the business. We've been scaling the shit out of the business side of things for the last 3 years. So, but we are talking about like, look, we got to really start focusing on doing these community type things again, but
So what's the end goal then? How big are you going to scale this thing?
the thing I visualize is this huge, like it's this huge compound, like a large piece of land that has a big, I wanted to talk to you about that.
Wait
actually.
a minute.
Yeah, so
I know a guy.
it's going to have like a main facility where there's an art gallery, there's a graffiti art shop where you can buy supplies and things like that, and then there's offices in the back, a huge fulfillment warehouse, a podcast studio, all of that kind of stuff in the one building. And then I picture next to it is just a huge graffiti yard with like walls and like all these cool things, maybe even like a billboard for visiting artists, say, hey, you get to paint the billboard and we'll leave it up for a month or whatever.
Yeah.
And then on that same site, I want to have a manufacturing, because we make markers and we make different products, some of our own original products. So I want to have like a manufacturing plant there with filling equipment and sticker printing and all that. And then I even was thinking it would be cool to have like sort of like a set of like bungalow type of houses on the place.
Dorm style living almost.
Yeah, when we fly in people from like other countries or visiting artists and stuff to do, lectures or workshops or, showing at the place. I thought it would be kind of cool to have like almost like a themed Airbnb type of little place. So it's, I don't know how long it's going to take to get there, but that's
awesome, man.
I do visualization every day, and I walk that place and I drive a golf cart around,
Absolutely.
Dude,
let's work together, man. If there's anything I can do to help you get land for that, we'll talk about it after this, but dude, I'd be all about helping out at something like that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
If I can't, I can probably put you in touch with someone who can.
Yeah. Awesome, man. We're scaling pretty fast. So I don't know, maybe in the next few years, we may be, I don't know, close to thinking about that.
Yeah. Hell yeah. That's awesome. Well, Mike, I'm sure you're not the kind of guy who likes accolades, but dude, you were doing something that's absolutely amazing. I guess technically you're a liaison between these kids in this community and business places like Arte, like and I use Arte because it's the example we both understand. Big business, big leaders, people doing huge things, mega things, but you're the guy that can connect those kids with something like that they would never have seen before. That just doesn't exist in their world. And I understand, I've been kind of around that type of world as well, where they don't know anything outside of the hood or the neighborhood, right? We live in Denver, and I've talked to kids that didn't realize you could drive into the mountains. They didn't realize there were roads there. They've never left the hood. They've absolutely never left. So for you to bring the world of big business and just the idea of bigger possibilities to these kids is fucking huge. So, dude, I want to commend you on that. I want to give you a ton of accolades for that. You probably
Appreciate
don't.
That.
You're that guy that's like, I'm good, man. I'm good.
All right, that's cool, man.
Anything else you want to say, dude, before we wrap up?
No, I just really appreciate the opportunity. I always like talking about stuff, and wherever the conversation goes. I don't talk about myself very often, but it's still cool to hear, especially hear you getting what I'm doing. You understand, like that whole thing about being the liaison. I have thought about that a lot because I work with, the Palos Verdes Art Center that funded our mobile graffiti art. They're like a highbrow kind of like, art space, and they do all these kind of like high-end things with hors d'oeuvres and all this kind of shit that like I never do, and so it was interesting to do things with them and actually bring some of these kids up there and just to be like, wow, I'm a graffiti writer, and like they're graffiti writers, and I'm also a business guy. So like it's cool to hear you say that in the way that you said it, because I have thought a lot about that as far as like being on both sides of the fence, of those two things, So
Yeah,
I
it
really
absolutely.
appreciate
Well, that Palisade group would never have known the kids that you work with. Your kids would never have known that world, So it's a connection that would have never happened if it weren't for you. So you deserve absolutely all the kudos, respect, all the good stuff that goes along with that, man.
appreciate it, man.
That's really cool, dude. So but yeah, so that's hopefully we can spread the word, and we get some more people out there helping you all over the country after hearing this. Let's see here. Okay, so final question. This is the big one. I prepped you for this. This is the big question. Okay, we are LandLife, obviously. LandLife. I'm wearing the shirt today. If you could buy land, and I think I know your answer now, but anywhere in the entire world, you could buy land anywhere or own land anywhere in the entire world. Where would it be and why?
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think of an interesting answer to this, and I guess I kind of have two. I mean, one, obviously, we're scaling in Nevada or Las Vegas, somewhere. I don't know where it's going to end up. That thing I was just telling you about.
Yeah.
But I would just probably take a simple answer, and just if I could get a huge piece of land out here so that I could start building that thing, that would probably be
Heck yeah.
my first answer. But from the paranoid fucking weirdo in me, I was like, I think I would want a piece of land that has its own water supply, because
Definitely.
it's fucking weird right now. So
not a ton in Nevada.
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I hope it doesn't get down to where I have to retreat to some fucking weird middle of nowhere. but
it'd be nice to have that just in case.
I would feel better if I was like, I have a piece of land that I don't have to worry about water.
Yeah.
So
you can Airbnb it all year when you're not there.
Yeah.
And then you have the safety of going to this place, if shit hits the fan.
Yeah, exactly.
Right on. All right, Mike the Machine, where can people find you? How can they contact you? How can they get hold of you to talk?
So we're most active on Instagram at Machine Studio. You can see a lot of the stuff we do there. You can go to machinestudio.com. Also, there's that's mainly our business type of stuff, but you can contact us through that. And then you can check out my podcast, Graffiti Machine podcast. It's on every regular podcast platform.
Right on.
Cool.
Right on. Mike, I respect the hell out of you, dude. You're doing good work, man. You're doing real stuff here.
Thanks, man.
Guys, so don't forget, like, subscribe, leave 5 stars, tell your friends about this so we can help Mike expand this amazing idea, this amazing business that he's got. Till next time, guys. LandLife. See you then.